Hi guys, good morning. I know this video is getting out to you guys a little later than normal. We are just having a little bit of technical issues with our recording software at the moment. So I'm going to do my best to get these to you until our Google gets updated again. So we are in Biology B now. Welcome. I'm so excited to enter this encounter with you. I really loved Biology A. I love the things we talk about there, but Biology B kind of gets into those more interesting side of things that we kind of really want to talk about. We talk a little bit about evolution. We talk a little bit about the environment, things that, we see and we deal with, we hear the stories about in the news on the everyday, that you guys can really connect to. It's not stuff so much that's internally working with you, but it's the stuff we see on the outside, the biology in the world that we can actually see with our own eyes. So that's the really fun part about Biology B. So I'm going to share my screen and we will go from there. All right, perfect. Okay, so this over here, this is our Biology B course. If you haven't already added to the course, here is our class code. It's the 6Q5ZFDO. Okay, just like last semester, all of your coursework will be posted in here on the stream. But the best thing and the easiest thing to do is to jump over into this classwork section. Mine looks a little different than yours, but not too much different. These are the weeks, these are the things we'll be going over. We have a full 17-week schedule here. So our first unit's going to be these first 5 weeks here. So this is week 1, obviously. And then on week 5, we have our Unit 4 tests. So just something to keep in mind and get used to. So what we're going to start talking about this week, we're going to start talking about binomial nomenclature. And we'll get into that here in the PowerPoint. I just kind of want to go through all this with you guys. So this assignment right down here, or right here, we have the syllabus. It looks almost identical to the Biology A syllabus, but if you weren't here for Biology A, please take a look at that just to make sure you know. I would really appreciate it if you guys showed up once a week to our meetings. They're 9 a.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. I know that that can be kind of early, but it is really important that you guys are here for these meetings and learn this information. It'll just make everything a little bit easier for you. We also each week have these week 1 assignment docs. Let me just pull this up for you here. Okay. And so here again, it gives you a link to your syllabus, it gives you your classroom code, it tells you what pages on your textbooks you could read, it gives you another link to your Google slide presentation, and then it tells you what assignments are going to be due this week. So the assignments that are going to be due this week are going to be our nomenclature discussion, our weekly quiz that we have, and this week we're going to have a binomial nomenclature assignment. I'm going to try to keep assignments to an every 2-week thing, just to, kind of give you guys a break and then allow you some time to complete those assignments. So speaking of assignments, we do have one that I have given you this week. And this will make a little more sense once we go through the slideshow, but I do want to talk about it here. So this is our binomial nomenclature assignment. I've made a copy for each of you, so you will find this in your Google Classroom. So what this says is for this assignment, you will look up 3 different organisms. What I mean by organisms, I mean an elephant, I mean a pine tree, I mean a worm, I mean an arthropod. Not an arthropod, but like a specific version of an arthropod. So are we talking a cockroach or are we talking a crayfish? So you're going to look up what that organism is. You're going to give the common name of that organism. So if I was going to do elephant, I would write elephant. Down here in the description, I would say the elephants are very large. They have a trunk. They're gray. They have big ears. Just kind of take a look at the organism that you're talking about and describe it. If we were going to do a pine tree for a second one, we would say it's a pine tree. It's kind of like cone shaped. or triangle shaped, however you would like to describe it. It's green with a brown trunk. It has pointy needles. It creates sap. Okay. Then all you're going to do, and I'll just do this one for you. I'll do elephant. Okay. You're going to go over here to Google and you're going to type in elephant, and then you're going to type in domain, kingdom, phylum. Okay. And it'll pop up and it'll look like this. Bet you if you go over here to this African elephant is the one that you'll want to reference here. It'll tell you. So this is a great website right here, and I bet you can find many other animals here, but here, your domain is Eukarya, your kingdom is Animalia, your phylum is Chordata, your class is Mammalia, your order is Proboscidea, your family is Elephantodonta, the genus is Loxodonta, and the species is Loxodonta of Africa. So back to that sheet that we were working on, you just plug those in: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. It's really simple. I'm not trying to make this hard on you guys. I just want you to be able to look up this information and understand the way that organisms might be classified. So let's get started with our information for this week. So we are talking about, again, binomial nomenclature. So what is binomial nomenclature? What does that mean? Binomial nomenclature is, as it says here on this little sticky note here, it is how biologists name things, okay? They give it a specific name. Well, it has a name, like a dog has a name. It's called a dog. Why do we need to name it something else? Well, here's why, okay? In English, we call it a dog, but in Spanish, they call it perro. In French, they call it chien, keys, okay, HUD. In all these different languages, there's different words for this animal. Same thing with elephant, same thing with pine tree. You know, there's different words in all these different languages for different organisms, for different animals. And so with that being said, if you have a scientist who is working in if you have a scientist who is working in Germany and they speak German, trying to work with an American scientist who doesn't speak German, then it might be difficult for them to communicate about an organism if they're calling them different things. Okay, so that's why scientists have created this binomial nomenclature, so that truly at the end of the day, they can, you know, understand each other when they're working together on a project, but also so that they can see how species are connected, and how, like, are different organisms related? And we'll talk a little bit more about that here. So this is our classification system. So this is how animals are classified, or not even animals. This is how all organisms are classified. So domain up here, as you can see, it's the biggest block. That's because it's the most broad area. And then as you go down the pyramid here, or down the triangle, the little blocks get smaller and smaller, because again, down here in species, that's the most specific way you can classify an organism. So a good way to remember this order of domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species is this little analogy here. Dear King Philip came over for good soup. So dear King Philip came over for good soup. It's a really easy way to remember all of these. And then you can just put them in order. It's also really nice that they all start with a different letter, to be able to put them in order. So let's talk a little bit. And then genus and species, we're going to talk about here more at the end, but that is how you actually, scientists actually name animals. They call them by their genus and their species, but we'll talk about that at the end here. So this, for instance, is the classification of the Urus Arcturus. And so let's go through it here. So at the top, they didn't start with domain, but they're in the Eukarya domain. And we know that because they're animals and all animals are Eukarya. But they're in the Animalia kingdom, okay? But there are lots of other kingdoms out there, and we'll talk about them. And then from there, this brown bear here trying to look for, it has a spinal cord, just like all these other animals. So it is in the classification of Chordata. The sea star here doesn't have a spinal cord, so it goes into a different phylum. Next, you have this line over here where we're talking about class. Well, all of these animals are mammals. Okay, so all of these animals are mammals. So the snake has then been removed from here. Next, all of these next animals in the order are carnivora, or again, carnivores. So the squirrel, because the squirrel eats nuts and doesn't eat meat like the other carnivores here, are removed. Okay. And then the next one you have down here, yep, there we go. The next one we have down here in family, it says Ursidae, which means bears. Okay, so you have all of these different bears here, and that's a lot more, that's kind of really broad term to use for bears. And then when you get down here to genus, they're talking about like the type of bear that it is. So obviously the panda is going to get removed from here because it's not, in this category of bears that are kind of more angry, strong, etc. And then lastly, to say brown bear, because it's obviously different than this black bear, you're going to use the term Urosectorus. Okay, so now let's take a step back and let's go into domain. Okay, so when I was in school, there was actually only 2 domains, but now we've kind of separated them back out. And we have bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. So the bacteria are going to be probiotic cells that lack a nucleus, and also contain pathogenic information. Okay, really important to know. Obviously, you know that there are bacteria everywhere in the world. It makes us sick, but also we have good bacteria that live in our gut every day, but they do contain some sort of pathogenic information. Okay. We also have archaea, which again are also going to be probiotic cells that lack a nucleus, but then they consist of extremophiles. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to have eukarya, which is where we're going to fall under, which is where plants are going to fall under. And so that's going to be any organism that contains membrane-bound membrane-bound nucleus and organelles. So now let's take a jump into the kingdoms. Okay, so what do we have here for kingdoms? You're going to jump down and you're going to have the Monera and the Protista. Okay, so the Monera down here, again, you're going to be dealing with bacteria. Okay, a little bit of bacteria down here. Then you're going to have the Protista. Okay, so this is where you're going to have some flagella. You're also going to have some algae. Plants, obviously we know what plants are. But in here in plants, you have pine trees, you have flowers, angiosperms, you have ferns, you have mosses. Mosses are plants, they're not algae. Sometimes they look the same, but they're not the same. We obviously know about fungi, different mushrooms that we see. A lot of times we see these in our yard. Sometimes we see them in the forest when we're walking around. And then, and then we, of course, have animalia, or animals. And that is such a broad category. And every day I feel like, because we haven't traveled to the deepest depths of the sea and things like that, there is always something new popping up. We extend from jellyfish to worms to insects to snakes, and Amelia, it encompasses all of these. So it's really a very, very broad category. Again, just another example trying to allow you guys to see and understand. This bacteria and archaea up here, they fall into that Monera category up here, okay? So and then the Protista over here are in the eukarya category. All right, so now we're going to talk about phyla a little bit for each of the different 5 kingdoms here, okay? The biggest thing is I have just given you examples here. There might be 1, maybe 2 of these phyla that I actually want you to remember, but truly at the end of the day, focus on the numbers, okay? Focus on the numbers up here, and then I don't want you to remember all of these. There's so many phyla out there. There's no reason for you guys to remember these, okay? So when we're talking about Monera, there's about 29 different phyla in this kingdom. Here's some common ones over here. These are, again, we're going to be focusing on bacteria. So we have the cyanobacteria. So those are ones that are going to, deal with some light exchange, okay? And then we also have the anticyanobacteria, okay, and just all sorts of different kinds of bacteria there. With the fungi over here, it says we have 8, I meant 7, bacteria in this kingdom, okay? And so actually, no, it is 8. I just numbered them wrong. Oh, I see now. My apologies. Sorry about that. And so there's just, we see all these different mushrooms in the world, but they all fall into these 8 different phyla. So that's really cool to see that there's only 8 out there. The protist, the protista, the algae that we were talking about, there's about 15, but again, these are always growing. We're always trying to understand and figure out where these are coming from, okay? Again, we haven't explored every nook and cranny of Earth, so there's always something new, and also things are always evolving, so that might create a new phyla, a new species based on where the evolution happened. Our next 2 categories are plants and animals. Plants, there's a million plants we see out there, but that truly and honestly, there's 5 phyla. They're limited to 5 phyla, and here are the different phyla you're working with here. This chloro right here, I know we haven't studied plants yet, but we have studied what is inside a plant, and that chloro to me sounds like a chloroplast, so I bet you that has to deal with plants that make their own food. But there's all sorts of different plants out there. These angiosperms down here, we'll find out a little later when we talk about plants, but that's going to refer to mosses, okay? Just, kind of really interesting stuff. And then the phyla for animals, there's at least 30 different phyla in this kingdom, which that's so many for you guys to remember. And again, as I always stress, like this is basic biology here. So we're just trying to learn the basics of everything. When you're talking arthropods, you are talking, things typically like within exoskeleton. So we're going to look at cockroaches, we're going to look at crayfish, different things like that. And then we also have like mollusks. So you're going to be thinking like clams, you're going to be thinking mussels, different things on that nature. The biggest one we're going to focus on, and the one that I want you guys to remember, is this chordata. This is where we as humans fall in, and most or all mammals, and then a lot of animals fall into this chordata range. So the chordata means spinal cord, and so truly and honestly, it's anything with a spinal cord it falls into this chordata category. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to jump down from the class, down from the order, and we're going to talk about genus and species. And truly and honestly, genus and species and the way these organisms are named, okay? So we have all of these different, and I'm going to use a really loose term here because obviously some of them are not, horses, okay? So we have these wild horses over here. We have these zebras right here, and then we have this donkey here, okay? So these names that you see above each of these pictures are actually their genus and their species, okay? It's their genus and their species. So when referring to the genus, it's always going to be capitalized, and then the species is always going to be lowercase. So when we look at these animals here, the question is, do we think that these animals are related, yes or no? The answer is yes, they are related because they all come from the same genus, okay? But they're not the same species. Okay, obviously they're not the same species. Just look at them. Like you got a donkey over here. It doesn't look anything like a zebra, but they're all hoofed-footed mammals. Okay, and that's it's a big thing to take into consideration here. Another hoofed-footed mammal that you're like, what is a hippo? A hippo is actually a hoofed-footed mammal. So somewhere along the line, there's a little bit of a relation between a zebra and a hippo. And I know you're like, they look nothing alike, Miss Marshawn. There's no way they could be related. They are, they branch from, their family tree all links back up. Okay. So something to consider. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some furry creatures. And again, we talked about genus and species. So we know that the first word is the genus and the second word is the species. So this one down here is a mouse. This one down here is a type of mouse. When you look up here at this one, it has a different genus than the other two. And the more I look at it and the closer I look at it, this one's not actually a mouse. This one's a hamster. Okay, so that's what you're dealing with here. You have these two different mice here, and they're obviously different species. You can tell that based on their face shape, based on their coloring, based on the way their ears are. They're still mice. They're still related, but this hamster is not as closely related to these two different mice down here. And that's because it's in a different genus. So again, back to the brown bear here, the Urosectus. The genus is always going to be the first word, okay, and it's always going to be capitalized. This is a really big part. This will be on your quiz. Just want to make sure you know that. Okay, and then our second word is going to be the species. It's always in lowercase, and then if you were ever to write a technical paper, that species would also typically be italicized. Okay, so Urosectus, that's brown bear, and so then this one is obviously the genus and it's going to be capitalized. That means bear. And then this is the ectus, which is going to refer to it's the brown one and not the black one. Okay. Now let's take a look at these three different species here. So here's what we have. We have the alligator Mississippianus. Okay, so again, it's the alligator is its genus, and then Mississippianus is going to be its species. This Asian elephant over here, Elephas is going to be its genus, and then Maximus is going to be its species. Okay, and then lastly down here with the cheetah, we have the Axanox and then the Jubuctus. That's going to be its genus, and then again its species. I would love to tell you that scientists are super smart and they are way above us. But when we take a look at some of these names, I go, really? Like, that's the best you could come up with? So over here, let's take a look at this alligator. Oh, this alligator is from Mississippi. So that's what they called it, alligator from Mississippi. Okay, that was the best they could come up with for a species over there. This elephant, on the other hand, oh, it is an elephant. It's a big one. They call it the Maximus elephant because it's maximum. It's the biggest elephant. Okay. Now, let's think about alligators that are from Mississippi. Okay, so an English word, Maximus for this Asian elephant, maximum is kind of a word that comes from a Latin derivative, so it's kind of nationally recognized. This cheetah down here, you're like, I don't recognize any of those words. I bet if we looked in cultures in Africa, in, Asia and other countries like that, these words would come up very similar to the way the cheetah looks. And so scientists in those cultures chose the genus, chose the species based on the way it looked. And it's not, as much as it seems really, really complicated for us who are outsiders and not in this every day, it can be super simple because scientists were just trying to make this naming process easier for everyone and not trying to complicate it. Okay. There is a video here that you guys can watch. This is in your Google Classroom. I do recommend watching that. There's some useful information in there. And it'll be great for you guys. All right. Okay. So that is what we have for information for this week. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have any concerns about the information that needs to be completed this week, about the assignments that need to be completed this week. I would love to help you guys out. I so look forward to the semester with you guys. I think it's going to be a great semester. I think we're going to learn a lot of great stuff. But again, please reach out to me if you need anything at all. Have a great day.